What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Crypto Rundown. Boy, do we need to hit the charts because Bitcoin cracked over July 4th weekend to the downside. Brendan, what are you seeing?
Yeah, that's right, Tevo. Bitcoin has formed a new range below $60,000. Prices are moving to lower lows. However, things are not what they seem, as there is something that we like to call as hidden bullish divergence on the charts. We're going to talk about how Bitcoin could secretly be bullish here, how it could actually be getting ready for new all-time highs, because this is something that we have seen before. And on the fundamental side, we're seeing that SIBO is applying for the Solana ETFs. The Ethereum ETFs should begin trading soon. Everyone, literally everyone, is updating their Ethereum ETFs. And even CNBC was talking about how everyone should be owning between 2 to 5% of their portfolio in Bitcoin. So there's so much stuff happening here.
Absolutely. And while price action was going down, the Bitcoin ETFs actually saw inflows last week, even though it was a low volume week. Guys, the timestamps are below, so you can watch what you want to watch when you want to watch it. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and enjoy the episode.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Crypto Market Rundown, where we talk about everything that's happening in the great world of cryptocurrency, from the fundamentals in the news to the technicals on the charts. We spend the time doing hours of research so that you all don't have to. We are back yet again with yet another action-packed week in the crypto markets. I mean, man, we have Bitcoin cracking into a new range. We have tons of stuff happening around the Solana ETFs. Everyone is updating their Ethereum ETFs. You know, we have new recommendations saying that portfolios should hold 2 to 5% of their Bitcoin and so much more. So we could not be more excited to bring all this news to you. Despite the price moving down a little bit on most cryptocurrencies, the fundamental news is arguably better than it has ever been. And we want to show you why in today's market rundown. But before we get too deep into it, Tevo, how are we feeling over there?
Doing good, coming off an exciting July 4th weekend, and Bitcoin always has a knack sometimes for the holiday weekends making big moves. I remember, I can't remember what was it would have been 2020 or 21, where it was like Thanksgiving Day. It started crashing. So yeah, I thought it was not necessarily funny, but it was like classic, out late, 4th of July evening or whatever, the day before, and just started turning over on us. But yeah, like you said, we got a lot of positive news. I know we mentioned it last week, and sometimes the price action hurts, but it's always good to zoom out and again look at the fundamentals, look at where we were a year ago, 2 years ago, etc. And take a grain of salt with every minor price movement that we see.
Yeah, I mean, it was a volatile weekend here in the States. Like you said, we were going into a holiday for Independence Day here in the States, July 4th, and it was volatile. I mean, we saw Bitcoin go down from 64K down to about 53K. It was about a $10,000 drop over the holiday, and we've kind of found the new range now in between 53K and 60K. So what we're seeing is a little bit of those previous support areas around 60K, around the 200-day moving average. They're starting to turn into resistance now. And that's where Bitcoin has begun to struggle. And of course, we're going to show all the charts. We're going to show all the articles. We're going to show, pretty much everything that we're talking about with the visual side. And in order to follow along and see all the visuals and the charts and the articles that we're going to be referencing, you need to go over to the YouTube channel. So if you're a Spotify listener, if you're an Apple Podcast listener, if you are an Audible listener, anything like that, and you want to see the visuals, you got to make sure you make your way over to the YouTube side, which is Crypto 101 Podcast on YouTube. And again, that's where you're going to see all the charts and everything. But, let's I guess talk about the charts first. Sometimes we like to start with the news, but let's talk about the charts here because prices moved quite a bit. Again, we saw a $10,000 move in Bitcoin. We've seen Ethereum break 3K. We saw altcoins kind of break down to lower lows as well. But since then, we found this bottom. So I think it's appropriate this week if we kind of take a look at what's happening on the charts here first, and then we move into the news afterwards. So I'm going to throw up the Bitcoin chart here. And this is where you're going to be able to see our previous range right here around $60,000 to $70,000, right? We are kind of ping-ponging or pinballing back and forth here for a while. Found a lot of support here around 60K. You can also see that coincidentally, this is where the 200-day moving average was. And Bitcoin has since broken down through this level. And you can see if we zoom in over here, this previous area of support has now turned into an area of resistance. So again, where we were previously seeing a lot of buyers around 60K, not just on this last attempt, but numerous attempts previously, we were seeing a lot of buyers around this zone. Well, this is now where we see people taking profits on Bitcoin. So you're probably asking yourself, Brendan, that seems like it's probably not the most bullish thing, right? However, there's a bit of a caveat here. I think that this is made to look worse than it actually is. And we're going to show why on the fundamental side, because there's so many articles saying, hey, we need to understand who is selling here. And we're going to explain that once we get into the articles. But from a technical perspective, even though we have prices breaking down to lower lows, we have prices rejecting their previous support areas, making them turn into newfound resistance areas like we're seeing right here, kind of like an inverse break hook and go, as we like to say in the TA side of things. Even though we're having this happen, if we actually zoom out, or rather move over to some of our indicators here, what we can see is that despite hitting lower lows on the price chart, the things like the RSI and the MACD histogram and other stuff are seeing higher lows in the oversold territory. Now, what does this mean? Well, this is something that can be referred to as hidden bullish divergence for all the chart gurus out there. For all the people who love trading, they might be familiar with this. And essentially what this is saying, despite prices hitting lower lows, the indicators like the RSI and the MACD are seeing higher lows, especially in this oversold territory, which means that essentially the bears are getting weaker, even though price is getting lower, which can be an indication of a fake out. And we've seen this before. So again, here is the higher low on the RSI. We saw it come down on June 24th, pretty much hit a bottom of 25. We saw it rise back up. With this most recent move to the downside, it only came down to about 27, 28. This marks the higher low here, despite those prices moving to a lower low. So whenever we get a higher low in an oversold territory on the RSI, that stands for bullish divergence. Similar thing is happening over here with the MACD, especially on the histogram on the MACD. The histogram on the MACD over here has shown this before. I mean, we saw what happened over here. We're now seeing it happen again over here, where we have a higher low on the MACD, again, signaling that the bears and the sellers, they are getting weaker despite pushing prices down further. It is a false sense of security. Now, does that mean it's a guarantee? Absolutely not, right? We always like to say there's no guarantees in trading. There's no guarantees in crypto. If anyone tells you that it's a guarantee that something's going to happen, they are playing a guessing game and they're lying to you. However, from a probability standpoint, this is something that we like to call hidden or secret bullish divergence, where the sellers are actually getting weaker. They're putting on a false forefront of strength, and it can be a bit misleading. So if we actually look at the last time that we saw the indicators this low, for the RSI, it would mean, the last time that we saw the RSI this low was in August of 2023. Now, where was price then? Well, if we zoom out and we go back to August of 2023, this brings us all the way back here to when Bitcoin was trading around $25,000 right here. Now, coincidentally enough, I'll explain why this is a really significant area, but this is where Bitcoin was the last time that the RSI, or the relative strength index, was this low. We saw Bitcoin trading around $25,000, and needless to say, we can tell what happened in the months following this. I mean, Bitcoin destroyed its previous high here, shot up above 70,000, and just about tripled in price from this area. So what we can see is that from this range, this exact same range during the same period, this is a very similar situation to where we're at today. So I want everyone to kind of take a mental picture of what we are seeing over here with this sideways choppiness, right? Sideways consolidation, a break and rejection of the 200-day moving average. I want you to just take a mental image of this. And then as we move back to this exact same period last year, I want you to look at what happened then. Well, here we had a break of the local highs. We had an extended period of sideways consolidation where Bitcoin was chopping around, bouncing off support, rejecting resistance, just on repeat, back and forth. And eventually, after months of doing this, we saw a break of the 200-day moving average and a rejection afterwards. In fact, Bitcoin did this for about a 2 to 3 month period where it was going through August, September, October, even leading up into November. It was trading below the 200-day moving average. A lot of people were freaking out. They're saying this is the end of the bull market. And then as we can show over here, surely enough, it wasn't, as prices skyrocketed. So now we're essentially seeing this happen in almost the same time frame. Right now, at the time of making this, we're about halfway through July. The last time this happened, it was at the beginning of August. So is it in a one-to-one replica? No, but you can see that it's pretty close. We're about a couple weeks apart, but it's following the same timeline. We're seeing very similar price reaction from what we were doing exactly almost a year ago. So I want to kind of just take us back to the indicators here and say, hey, the last time the RSI was this low, it was when we were in a very familiar situation. What about the MACD, right? Because we kind of referenced that. Well, this is the lowest that the MACD has been since June of 2022. And the last time that we saw Bitcoin, or I guess the price of Bitcoin in June of 2022, was when Bitcoin was trading at $20,000, which means that it was a screaming buy opportunity over here. So again, the last time that we've seen the RSI this low, Bitcoin was trading at 25K before it rallied up to 74K. The last time that we saw the MACD this low is when Bitcoin was trading at 20K before it bottomed out just a few months later, and then of course ran up to 74K in the year following that. And so the reason that I bring this up is that not only is this a very familiar situation to us, something that we've seen before, but the last time that we are at these lows, we were very close to a bottom in the following months before Bitcoin saw just these record level gains, saw record level highs, and all this stuff. And the reason that I bring this up is because Bitcoin could be preparing to do a very similar move again, as it potentially is getting ready to put in a macro bottom and go on another one of these moves like we've seen it do in the past. I don't think anyone really expected Bitcoin to top out in 2024. I think most predictions were still looking at 2025, saying that is the kind of area that everyone's looking at. That's the time horizon. People are saying, hey, 2024 will be cool and all, but 2025 is what most people are excited about. Now, what that means is that maybe we have a little bit of choppiness in the short term, right? Maybe we chop around, maybe we consolidate, maybe we hang around the 200-day moving average for a little bit longer. But, keep in mind that a lot of people are more excited about next year than they are this year. It doesn't mean that good things can't happen this year. It doesn't mean that we can't hit new highs this year. However, people do have a little bit more of a long-term approach, especially what we saw during this time period last year. So that's some of the stuff that I've been seeing over here. I mean, Tevo, I want to pass it to you. I know we were kind of going back and forth about these, essentially just the ETF inflow and outflow situation, because that's been another kind of big talking point, especially on social media.
So even though last week we had obviously downward price action, specifically the BitBeast, that's Bitwise, saw a lot of inflows, which is great news. So it's like kind of that institutionals buying the dip while the overall arching price is going down. So you can kind of still see that the at least the U.S. Dip buyers are kind of lining up. They understand, especially maybe not necessarily institutional investors, but anybody who is putting large amounts of money, they understand that, we're not putting this for the 2-week breakout, 1 month breakout, even 3 months. These people are looking 6 months, a year plus down the road. And I thought that was at least nice to read this weekend. I think I sent this to you. I was in like an Uber at midnight, just scrolling Twitter, and I sent this to you, just looking for some good news. So there's plenty of again, we went over the price action, not how you necessarily want to see it, especially when you're looking at your accounts, and if you're at exposure, you're obviously you're down a little bit on unrealized loss there, but there's too much positive news out there to not talk about it. So one was the ETF saw a lot of inflows, and then our next topic is the Solana ETFs. People are filing kind of the next step. So when it comes to the ETF process, it's called S1, I believe, is a form, and so a lot of people are starting to file those.
Yeah, and before we get into that, let's talk about these flows, right? Because people have been worried, right? We've seen the United States selling Bitcoin. We've seen Germany selling Bitcoin. We've seen all these countries selling Bitcoin. But who's not selling? For the most part, right? Obviously, I'm sure there's a little bit of retail and institutional sales, but the vast majority of it is from these countries. And it's not from institutional money, as you just showed, and it's not from retail money either. We're seeing tons of inflows, tons of buyers from the institutional and the retail side, tons of backing from those as well. And what we're really seeing here is that aside from the governments, there's not a ton of people that are just dumping Bitcoin onto the market. And it makes you wonder. I think Germany's burned through about half of all of their Bitcoin already. I mean, they've been dumping it really hard. And yeah, we moved down a little bit, but price hasn't crashed nearly as harshly as some people expected it to be. There was people on social media going, oh, we're going back to the lows. We're going back to 20, 30K. And here we are, right? We're just below $60,000 still. So prices have held up pretty good. And that's the takeaway that I see from this is I see like who is selling. You have to ask yourself that question. And the people that really aren't selling a ton here, the people who we still see inflows from are retail and the institutional side. And it's really just like the governmental side that is triggering some of these liquidations and sell orders and stuff like that. In fact, I think I saw the other day that we had beaten the record of liquidations from the FTX event, which is
I saw that too.
Freaking wild.
I found that kind of hard to believe, but that's crazy. It's a crazy stat.
Yeah, it's a wild stat. Me and some of the guys, Bryce and Matt, and we were talking about this the other day, and they brought it to my attention. But man, if that's a true stat, I mean that's wild. And again, prices held together so much better than it did during the FTX crash, and it's something to kind of take note of. But yeah, I mean, let's talk about what's happening over here with the Solana ETFs, right? Because we've seen multiple different TradFi groups come out and say, hey, we want these Solana ETFs. We've officially applied for them. And now we have Tevo, which is a giant, and I want to check their assets under management or how many assets are traded on Tevo, but it is this massive essentially like exchange, kind of like the New York Stock Exchange, but you have Tevo, and I'm looking at it right now, and I know that they have like just billions and billions of dollars that trade on this thing. And basically what they've done here is they have filed for approval to list the Solana ETFs. They've come out publicly. That'd be like the New York Stock Exchange or like NASDAQ and stuff being like, hey, we really want these Solana ETFs. We'll do it. We want to file to make sure that we can get these things ASAP. But instead, this is, a different group that's still inside the United States and everything. But they're coming out here. They're filing for approval. They want to list the Solana ETFs too. And this is a big move. Again, people are interested in this stuff. I think a lot of people have seen what has happened with the first 6 months of the Bitcoin ETF trading and the records that it has shattered and the records that it is broke and the volume that it's brought in. And everyone's now seeing, hey, if we miss this first opportunity, we want to make sure that we're capitalizing on these other crypto ETFs moving forward. And Solana is one of those. But the other one that we're seeing here is the Ethereum ETFs should hopefully begin trading pretty soon. I think most people were eyeing this up saying, hey, around mid-July, we're expecting to see these S1 approvals. I think it's the S1 approvals for the Ethereum ETFs. And essentially what we're seeing here is everyone's updating their Ethereum ETFs. And I think we can flash the image on the screen here from our boy James Safart, who's one of the lead ETF analysts over at Bloomberg Intelligence, just showing a picture here being like, boom, Fidelity updated their ETF, Franklin Templeton updated ETF, Grayscale, 21 shares, Van Eck. I mean, you can see it on the screen. Everyone is updating their Ethereum ETFs right now, 21 shares. Yeah, I mean, the list goes on. Everyone's updating it here. Now, what does that mean? Well, when we have a lot of activity like this, they're preparing for something. They're expecting something. And this could mean that the ETF approvals for Ethereum are getting really close. Like this could be the final stage, which is why there's so much activity from all these groups. Now, if it was just one ETF, Tevo, we could be like, okay, they messed up something. They revised it. But to see all of those, pretty much all the Ethereum ETF applicants all make changes at the same time, like same day, they're all coming in. It's like, all right, like we could be in the final stages before these Ethereum ETFs go live. And that's really exciting. And we'll explain why, and we'll look at the charts in just a second. But I want to pass it back to you because I don't view it as a coincidence.
No, and then another friend of the program, Matt Hogan, has started making his rounds, doing some podcasts. We'll see if we can maybe get him on maybe right after, because I know he's doing a lot right now. But I've seen him on. He was on CNBC yesterday or Monday or yesterday. I can't remember, but he was on CNBC. He's doing a lot of other crypto podcasts, and it kind of reminded me, like, right before the Bitcoin ETF went live, he started doing a lot of press, if you will. And again, he can't go on and specifically talk about his filing because that's against the law there. But just making it known, Bitwise is in the race and everything seems to be going good, and kind of talking macro about it. But he's been doing a lot of press hits, which makes me think that he's on board, believing that this is going to get done sooner rather than later.
I like that. It's awesome to have someone who's media minded like you, because the analysis of saying, hey, before the Bitcoin ETFs came out, we saw him doing a similar thing. And now all of a sudden the Ethereum ETFs look like they are going to be right around the corner. And now all of a sudden you're like, hey, he's starting to go on podcasts. He's starting to go on TV again and talk about this really frequently, which he's always on TV. But you're right. Like, that picks up, right, leading into something. And it makes sense. You want to get exposure. You want to get in front of people. So I like that. I think that's a good takeaway here. And the other thing that we're seeing is essentially that Ethereum, and we've mentioned this, Ethereum is still outperforming Bitcoin. I mean, even today, Bitcoin is down 0.4%. Ethereum is up 1.6%. We have seen ETH BTC going up. We've seen it performing strong. We've seen all these different metrics. Bitcoin dominance continues to drop. It's down by 0.6% today. Ethereum compared to Bitcoin is up 2.06% today. We are seeing Ethereum be really strong leading into this, hopefully approval and these things begin trading here soon. So let's flash it up on the screen. Let's talk about this, because what we didn't see from Ethereum that we saw in Bitcoin was a break of the lows. If we go back over here to to Bitcoin, we saw Bitcoin break the lows over here of 60K, right around 58K even. This was a lower low. If we go to Ethereum, it did not break its previous lows. It held here. Now, it still broke the 200-day moving average, but it looks like it is imminently about to break back through this thing and close above it. So we have a lot of pressure here from Ethereum. It held the lows. And this is what we mean by it's outperforming Bitcoin here. We've seen this in recent days. Now, it's not every day, clearly, but it's had a really nice rally off the bottom over here. And ever since then, ETH BTC has been holding really strong into a massive level of resistance. And if we continue to see this, and if we continue to see Bitcoin dominance fall and ETH BTC rise, it is a really good thing for the altcoin market. Now, Ethereum isn't the only one that's doing good here. We mentioned Solana and Tevo saying, hey, we want to kind of file for these things and we want to take part in all of this. Well, we're seeing the same thing over here with Solana, right? Solana also did not break the lows. We look at the chart over here, and Solana, previously topped out right around $120. We see it from back in December of 2023 here. It previously topped out here, used it as resistance, and ever since it broke out, it has tested this previous point of resistance as a very consistent level of support, even leading up into recently. So not only has Solana turned its previous top into its current bottom, but it never broke to a lower low. It never broke down in price below its previous lows, and it held the range, which is a great thing to see. So we're seeing fundamental developments in the two leaders of the altcoin market, Ethereum and Solana. And we're seeing that on the fundamental side, and we're seeing it on the technical side as well. So what does this mean? Well, it could mean a really good thing for altcoins. Altcoins have been suppressed for a while now. It's been a couple of months. We've been looking at this stuff. But man, if you can't tell from the news, there's just fundamental developments left and right. In fact, I don't know if we're going to flash it up on the screen here or, maybe we'll leave it in the show notes, but there was a clip from CNBC the other day that was just basically saying that it was them on TV saying, hey, people should have 2 to 5% of Bitcoin allocation, which is wild. We've seen this number grow over the years from people should have no Bitcoin allocation to people should have 1%. Now it's saying people should have 2%. Now it's saying people should have 2 to 5% Bitcoin allocation. And it's funny how this number continues to grow over the years. And so here we are, we have CNBC on television being like, hey, maybe it's not a bad idea for people to have 2 to 5% of Bitcoin allocation. And we have people on TV saying this now. So, quite the interesting scenario, Tevo.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously broken into the mainstream, at least financial television. I think when, price gets toppy, it starts to make it onto maybe your local news type of segment. But definitely over the last 5 years, it's been from, it earned its ticker space in the bottom right where it'd just be going through. Then Ethereum did. Now Solana's even on there. Now, I mean, most shows, especially when the price is doing things, most shows have a segment dedicated to it. If not, definitely talk about it, at least every week, even if the price action is pretty boring.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, another cool thing that I saw in the news is that the co-founder of Apple talking about Ethereum. I don't know if you saw this, but Steve Wozniak was talking about Ethereum, and he seems to be really bullish. Like, he understands the power that this could have here. And so this has people asking a couple of questions. Number one, can Ethereum be the next Apple, right? That's what the headline says here. Well, Steve Wozniak seems to be pretty bullish about it. He's predicting a $15,000 Ethereum. Now, I've always said I think a $10,000 Ethereum is completely possible. I think it's fairly conservative to think that Ethereum can hit $10,000, maybe in the cycle, maybe in the future. Basically saying, hey, in the not too distant future, I think that we can see a $10,000 Ethereum, and I think that's conservative. Steve Wozniak from Apple is also saying, hey, I think we could see a $15,000 Ethereum, and I believe he was saying that we could see this by October. So, I mean, that's a big name. This is someone who created one of the largest, most successful tech companies in history. They revolutionized the way that we use phones and technology and computers and just about everything. This is someone who is very deeply integrated into the technology space, and he's looking at Ethereum and saying, this thing could be huge. It's currently priced at $3,000. I think it could do a 5x up to $15,000. And that's a really bullish thing because, again, this is not some just influencer. It's not me telling you as a trading guy and as a news guy saying, hey, this thing could hit a price. No, this is a founder of one of the largest, most successful, revolutionary tech companies in the world saying, hey, I'm looking at this piece of technology and I think that it has a bright future to go from $3,000 to $15,000 this cycle. And, if we look at this, let's just step back and say, how is this possible? Well, if we look at the way that the Apple App Store and all that stuff has, kind of been birthed from the Apple products, not only has Apple turned into this wildly successful company, but there's been a number of apps that have just solely come from the Apple App Store that are now million and billion-dollar companies just because they're apps on the Apple App Store. And so in the same way that we look at apps for the Apple App Store being essentially projects built on Apple, so to say, we have Ethereum, and then we have altcoins that are going to be built on Ethereum in the same way that Apple apps are built on the Apple App Store. And so we could easily see that if Ethereum does turn into this thing, which people are expecting it to be, then there could be just loads of altcoin projects and Ethereum-based projects that are built on Ethereum that could be the same as the next, top Apple apps where they're these multi-billion-dollar companies. And that's kind of the way that I view it here. So I think that there are a lot of comparisons. I hope that that made sense. But there are comparisons that we can kind of draw here. Not to say that Ethereum and Apple are the same thing, but you can see why he's looking at this and saying, hey, there's a lot of potential, not only for the underlying project or asset of Ethereum itself, but also just for the ecosystem, because there can be so many different opportunities that are built on top of it once the infrastructure is laid properly.
Yeah, and a lot of people say that, crypto won't achieve mainstream adoption by the masses until people are using it but don't realize they're using it. So like everybody understands that as an iPhone is like, oh, I love my iPhone, I love the Mac, I love Apple, but that's really because they love iOS and how that technology, connects all those devices seamlessly together. So I see a lot of that on Twitter, and people talk about, we won't see mainstream crypto adoption until it kind of goes its way of the app and people just start using a certain app or a certain, phone, etc. until, it's just crypto or Ethereum or whatever the underlying technology is underneath, people won't truly understand, that it's technically crypto.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely still some kinks to work out and some problems to solve, especially when it comes to like the user friendliness front, where just having, it's like you said, I mean, just having people use this without really knowing or needing to know that they're using blockchain technology. They don't need to know all the intricacies. They don't need to know how to operate between all these different blockchains. A lot of people just want to be able to use this seamlessly. And if we can do that, I think that's where the success really comes. That's where mass adoption comes. And man, we are well on our way to doing that. And this reminded me, Tevo, kind of going back to our point from earlier when we were talking about the whole Bitcoin ETF inflows. James Safart was tweeting about this as well, saying, hey, Bitcoin ETFs are doing the exact opposite of quote unquote dumping here in the first 20% drawdowns that we've seen since launch. And man, I mean, he's spot on. He's really kind of hitting this one on the head. And
yeah, it's a
things
good
are
point
looking good.
Yeah, it's a good point to hammer home. He was actually quote tweeting the same tweet that we showed earlier. So it's like, multiple people are seeing this. And again, I think that's why you want to come and listen to these shows and, obviously do your own research, and it's never financial advice. But, when price goes down, obviously, 20% correction is clearly noticeable. But the historical bull market is 20 to 30%. So we're right within that range. Yep. And we have a new measuring stick. And these ETFs, last week, even though it was a low volume holiday week, the inflows were there. And so, you don't see Wall Street necessarily running for the hills, which is kind of part of the long-term playbook of this whole asset class.
Absolutely. Well, hey, everyone. We hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you like us just bringing all the news and all the technicals and everything that you need to know about the crypto markets, all that we ask here is that you hit the like button, you hit the subscribe button, and maybe you leave us a review or a comment. We love hearing from all of you. We're always reading through the comments. We love all the cool things that you all have to say and the recommendations that you have to offer. So if you like the content that we have here and giving it to you for free, again, all that we ask is that you smash that like and subscribe button and let us know what you think about the episode. But that's going to go ahead and round us out here. We hope all of you enjoyed, and we're going to see all of you at the same time, same place next week with another crypto market rundown.